Okay, it is 9:01. Um, let's see if it seems to be just you, Lucas. So if you don't mind turning on your camera. Oh, Jack is here too. Um, thank you guys for coming to class. Like I was saying, I would really appreciate if you guys turn on your camera so I could see you. That way, it's not just me talking to the void. But I will go ahead and get started so everybody can see my screen. Thumbs up. Is that a yes? I hope so. Yes. Okay, cool. Thank you. So welcome again to Creative Writing Fundamentals Session 3. I hope you've been enjoying the course so far. We're at the midpoint, or I guess in about an hour, we're going to be at the midpoint of this course. So I have a feedback form prepared for you guys, and I'll give you some time to fill that out before the end of class, so you can let me know how I'm doing and give me some feedback for how I can improve the rest of this course for you. So, like Lucas was saying, last week we worked on red flags and green lights, right? So today I want to take a minute to review those. I think some of you are already putting those into practice in your homework. Other ones, like, it's sort of hard to get the whole list. And so I'm still noticing some people using red flags and green lights. So I want to make sure we get those ingrained in your brain so that you guys know what you're looking for, so what things to avoid and what things to implement in your writing. Then we'll take a look at motifs and flow patterns. So I mentioned these as two of the green lights that we had. And we'll take a look at some examples of motifs and green lights and also talk about how you can implement them in your own writing. And then, like I said, there's going to be a little feedback form. I'll give you guys maybe 5 to 10 minutes to fill it out. You guys can let me know how I'm doing, how you're doing in the class, if there's anything that you feel like we could change to make it better for you. And then we'll talk about homework and reflection. Any questions before we get started about the homework, about class, about anything? Oh, okay, cool. So first of all, I have a little bit of an icebreaker question for you. If you are one of those people whose mic is broken, you might want to start typing your answer now so we don't have to wait too long. But I would like to hear your answer to this question. So if you could travel anywhere tomorrow, let's say like all expenses paid trip, where would you go and why? So let's see. Lucas, I think your mic was working. So do you want to go first?
Yeah, I can say anything.
Yeah.
Oh, let me think about it. I guess I would probably go to, honestly, I would go to China,
Okay. Why is that?
so I can see my dad. So I can see my dad. I haven't seen him in like 4 years since the pandemic.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, and I really want to fly. I just really want to fly to China, maybe Shenzhen, maybe.
Cool. Thank you for sharing. I hope you get to go soon.
Mm-hmm.
I went for the first time.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I went back in May, and it was my first time in 14 years. So hopefully you don't have to wait that long. But if you do, it's nice to go back. Jack also says he would like to go to China. These are good answers. I like this. And then Rafi says to Dubai for the nice hotels. Oh, nice. We have a good mix of answers here. Thank you, everybody, for participating. And let's get into it. So first off, I have a little bit of a quiz for you guys. So let's see. Hopefully you guys can still see this. Can you guys see the presentation? that a yes? Yes. Okay. So feel free to in another tab or on your phone or whatever, open a browser and join this quiz. So you can either do that by hitting a QR code, taking a picture of the QR code, or going to menti.com and then using the code. And drop me a message in the chat when you have joined. Yes, Lucas?
Can you like send the link in like the chat?
Sure. I can send you the link to the website. Code 72081426.
I'm in.
Okay, just waiting on Jack now, I think. Jack, let us know when you join the quiz. Joined. Okay, cool. So let's get started. So, like I said, this is a quiz about red flags and green lights. Hopefully you guys remember something from last week. So we have 3 players ready. So answer fast to get more points. He looked sad standing in a corner alone. Okay, everybody got this one. Telling, right? Because it's something, it's a character's thoughts or feeling. It's something that we wouldn't be able to see if we were there, right? Question number 2. So red flag or green light, he went quickly. Oh no, we have one person who thought it was a green light. So somebody who got this right want to explain why they thought it was a red flag? And maybe the person who thought it was a green light can defend themselves too. Lucas?
So it was I think it was a red flag because like it's not it's just telling and it doesn't really have any detail like a good path like a good message does.
Okay, so you got the right answer, but that's not the right reasoning. Think about it some more. What are the other red flags that this would fit under? So I think number 4 on the list was adverbs, right? And so I told you guys that one of the reason adverbs are red flag is because one, sometimes they don't modify a bad adverb doesn't modify the meaning of the verb. And this is a perfect example of this where he went quickly. I guess I would say it does sort of modify the verb, but it could be easily replaced with a better verb, right? So instead of he went quickly, you could just say he dashed or he sprinted, right? So I see this all the time on your homework. It's just a case of it could be better with a better verb and it's more precise. So Good job to those of you that got this one right. Question 3. You want your sentences to be around the same length, varying lengths, varying lengths. There you go. Remember that it's important to keep your sentences varying lengths so the readers don't get bored, right? Some of you have made comments on your homework about like pacing or like flow of your sentences. And so the purpose, or I should say the short sentences sort of like make you stop all the time. So they slow down the pace. If you have too many, it feels choppy. Long sentences flow, but it's easy to get lost in them. And so your goal is to sort of have a mix, right? So you have long sentences, you flow sometimes, and then you give a short sentences to let the reader catch a breath. It's the same way you like when you think about singing or you think about somebody reading your book, they don't really get a chance to pause and take a breath until there's a period. So if you give them too many short sentences, they'll have too many opportunities to do that and it'll feel choppy. But if you give them a mix, then they'll have time to take a breath, read a long sentence, and then, get it back when they're reading short sentences. Okay. Let's go, Shani. Question 4 of 10. So green light or red flag, hard rock. Whoops. So what made people think this was a green light? Lucas, I see you look confused. What's your reasoning? Yeah, so Jack says the rock is already hard. This is a redundant adjective. I see this on homework all the time. People write, she sat down on the cold, hard rock. I'm like, we know the rock is hard. It's a rock, right? So it's the same with the adverbs where you want to choose adverbs that will modify adverbs and adjectives that will modify the word that they are describing. Same with like, I don't know, maybe dark smoke or hot fire, right? Question 5 of 10. Which is better? He feels the sun on his back or the sun beats on his back? Oh no. Can somebody explain this one to me? Lucas, it looks like you got it right, maybe?
Yeah, so like he feels the sun on his back. I mean, he does, but like it's not very descriptive, and maybe you can add some like the sun beats on his back, like you can add some like I think it's like a better way of describing. Like you can feel if he feels the sun on his back, I don't think it's like nearly necessary. It can be like the sun is like burning on his back. I don't know. But I don't think he feels. I think you need to express a feeling or like an action.
Okay, you're on the right track. I would agree with that, but do you know which red flag I'm specifically looking for this one? What are these called when I say he feels, he sees, he hears?
I think there's 5 sentences.
No, not quite. So
No.
these are called verbs of perception, right? They're on the red flags list. It's when we say something like he feels this or he sees water dripping on himself. But it's like we don't need that because you can just say water drips on himself. So they're sort of like a redundant barrier between the reader and what's actually happening. Because we're like sort of putting the character there. We're like the character is feeling this, but you could just describe what is happening to the character and then the reader will feel it. So these are called verbs of perception. And it's true, like you said, that beats is a better verb. than feels, obviously, and it has more detail. But that's like sort of the consequence of using verbs of perception, right? So I guess I could have written this as he feels the sun beating on his back versus the sun beats on his back, and he would still want to prefer the sun beats on his back, even though the other one might also have the same verb. Good. Question 6. So which of these is better? He eavesdropped or he listened surreptitiously? Oh no. So this is the same one I was talking about, right? So the adverbs with the redundant meaning. Listen surreptitiously is not maybe redundant, but it could be replaced by a more precise verb, which is eavesdrop. This was the actual exact example that I used in class from last week. So it was on that little screenshot of the book that I included on the slide after the red flags. Remember, I was like good adverb, bad adverb. And I think the other example was like killing me softly versus like killing me viciously. And I was like, killing me softly is a good adverb because it's unexpected. So let's see. Okay. Good job to Shammy. So unusual noun verb combinations. And these green lights are red flags. Whoops. So everybody missed this one. Somebody want to explain why they thought it was a red flag? So this is number 2 on the green lights list, I think. Number 1 is sensory details. Number 2 is what we call genius verbs, right? So an unusual noun verb combination. And obviously, not all unusual noun verb combinations are good, but what I mean by this is like a lot of you guys will use verbs that everybody has heard with the noun. So maybe like rain falls or rain drops, I don't know, roll down her cheek. But it's a mark of a good writer to be able to come up with verbs that aren't typically used with the nouns that describe maybe a different way of interacting with it. So I think the example I had was like light hisses, or maybe like stuff like that, where you like mix different verbs where it still has a good meaning, but it's just not as used as much. Does that make sense? Instead of, hearing stuff like when I read your homework, I get a lot of he went, he ran, typical noun verb combination. Which of these verbs does not appeal to a sense? Glittered, howled, thought, brushed. Okay. I don't know why glittered. Somebody didn't think that appealed to a sense. That's something you can see, right? Howled is something you can hear. Brushed is something you can feel. But when somebody thinks something, you can. It's not a sense. So question 9 of 10. What are symbols that repeat called? Are they redundant? Are they similes? Are they motifs? Are they synecdoche? Motif. So we have one guess. I don't think anybody else guessed. And then question 10. Is, are, was, were, has, had. Forms of the verb to be. Okay, we got 2 for red flag, 1 for green light. These are red flags. You guys use them all the time in the homework. And there are some reasons they're red flags. So one is that they are typically pretty weak verbs and can be replaced by more active ones, right? So you guys will be like, he was yelling. And that's like, you could just use simple past. So he yelled, right? And you guys also sometimes say like the yells were muffled, where it's a linking verb, but you could just say something more descriptive with the, it's typically better to use active action verbs that move the action along in the paragraph. Okay, so Lucas is in first. Good job, round of applause. And hope you guys enjoyed the quiz. I think that concludes it. So hopefully you learned a bit about red flags and green lights, or I should say reviewed. I have them up here again, and I'll go through them really quickly. We've talked about some of them. So first one is cliches, right? So if you can finish it yourself without even reading it, it's probably a cliche. So this can either be a phrase, it can be a word, it can be a plot line. Some examples we came up with last class were maybe like happily ever after. I don't know, like the tortoise and the hare. It was a dark and stormy night, all these different things. Try not to use them because when you write them, they've been written so many times before that they have completely lost their original meaning. Number 2 is grammar mistakes, right? So don't misspell, don't misconjugate your verbs. A lot of times you guys will sort of, the subject is far from the verb, they won't agree in number or tense. So make sure you have subject verb agreement. Make sure you are not breaking parallel structure, right? So you guys remember what parallel structure is? That's when you have multiple elements in a list and they should all have the same grammatical structure. So maybe like you say, I don't know, green apples, red cherries, and then you don't want to like throw in something like green apples, red cherries, and berries that were blue. You just want to say blue berries. And then pronouns without antecedents. So you guys have these all the time, right? So make sure if you use it or she or her that like it's very clear in the paragraph what they are. Number 3 is repetition or redundancy. Try to find different ways to say the same thing. Don't just say the same words over and over. Like in the last homework, I got a lot of daughter. Like either give them a name and then use a pronoun or find ways to talk about other things. Adverbs. This is one that we covered heavily in the quiz, right? So you can find a more descriptive verb sometimes, and good adverbs have to modify the meaning of the verb and not just repeat it. What else? Number 5 is, are, was, were, has, had. So forms of the verb be. So also signifies passive voice usually. So he was holding a leaf over his head. He holds the leaf over his head. Please, please, please write in simple present and simple past in your homework. Do not try to use past progressive or all these different tenses. Number 6, he looks, he feels, he smells, he sees. These are, remember what I just said? Verbs of perception, right? So instead of he feels the rain dripping onto his boot, you just say rain drips onto his boot. Number 7 is crutch verbs. So telling verbs that extend a sentence without conjuring a concrete image, causing, creating, resulting, forming, making. And then finally, unnecessary adjectives. So hard rock, dark, smog, hot, fire. But these are red flags. Remember that red flags are things we should not be doing. So before you turn in your homework, you should look at this list You should have it somewhere, maybe pinned up on your wall, right? And look at this list and look at cliches and then read every sentence and be like, do I have any cliches? And then do I have any grammar mistakes? Do I have any places that are redundant? Do I have any adverbs that aren't good? Forms of the verb to be, why am I using them if I am using them? Do I have any verbs of perception or crutch verbs or unnecessary adjectives? And you go through and you wipe them all out. Any questions about these? No. Okay. So green lights. So we have sensory details, right? So showing and not telling. We have unusual verbs, the one that you guys all missed on the quiz. An unusual noun verb pairing, so light dripping or water hissing. And also similes that are unexpected. So in general, things that people might not have thought of themselves that you thought about is great to include. Motifs, so repeated symbols, images, and phrases, right? That's what we're going to be looking at today. Flow patterns, poetic devices, and then unique sentence structures. So you can vary your sentences by lengths. You can make them longer and shorter. It's good to have a mix. And you can also reorder the parts of speech. So sometimes you'll have subject and verb at the beginning. Sometimes you can have it at the end. Sometimes you can have the subject very far from the verb or before or after the verb. All these different things you can vary just to keep the reader engaged. Any questions about the green lights? No questions. Okay, so today we're going to take a look at patterns, specifically flow patterns and motifs. So flow pattern is the repeated use of a poetic device or a sentence structure. So similes, rhyme, one-word sentences. These can be a great way to emphasize a certain point, right? So a very famous flow pattern is Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech. I don't know if you guys have heard the whole thing, but he says it over and over again. He says, "I have a dream," blah, blah, blah. And then later he finishes his little paragraph and then he goes on to the next one. He says, "I have a dream." So much so that the speech is now remembered by that phrase, right? Now we call it the "I have a dream" speech. We don't say, you know, the speech he gave at Washington, D.C. this year. We just call it the "I have a dream" speech. And I think it's super powerful because you can use the same technique in your writing to sort of get home a point, play with expectation. Yes, that was Martin Luther King Jr. What else? The other pattern I want to talk about is motifs, right? So repeated image or symbol, like water or a specific smell or taste. There are motifs everywhere. If you think about, not just in writing, but if you think about even in music, da, 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 Beethoven's Fifth, that's a motif. It starts off, it repeats, and it sort of sticks in your head. That's like something you associate with it. Some other ones I thought of were like in Harry Potter, maybe the Horcrux. Those repeat, I think, after the fourth book multiple times. And so all these things serve the purpose of like linking these different parts of the story together, right? So every time you see a Horcrux in Harry Potter, you think about all the other Horcruxes or all the ones that we've seen before. And that's one of the powers of motifs. It's like, if it keeps repeating, it sticks in their brain, it sort of acquires meaning to the reader and reminds them of all the other times you saw. That make sense? Cool. So what we're going to do now is take a look at the reading from the homework. So last Thursday, I asked you guys to read Chanting Emeralds by Eric Lee, which I have pasted in this document. So what I want you guys to do is take about 10 minutes going through and commenting. So highlight, comment something. And what I want you guys to point out is, what flow patterns are you noticing? Are there any motifs? If so, how do they impact the overall story? So I will share this link with you guys. And then take about, say, 10 minutes to annotate the flow patterns you notice. And after that, I will ask you guys to share what you guys have found. Lucas?
Wait, how do I annotate on Google Docs?
So if you highlight, you will see this add comment
Mhm.
button.
And
And then
then
you
you
just
hit
hit add comment, and then you just type and you hit comment.
okay.
Alrighty, it's been about 10 minutes. Take a minute to wrap up. And remember that we're looking for motifs and flow pattern. So anybody want to volunteer to share theirs first? Gianna, is your mic working today? If not, feel free to put in the chat, and same goes for Jack and Rafi. So we are putting in a flow pattern or a motif that we noticed in the story and how it impacted the story. So pick one that you noticed and put it in what you thought, or the way you thought it impacted the overall story. Put it in the chat. While we wait for them, Lucas, do you want to share what you found?
I'm sure. So, I found like especially when the artisan was making it, it was always mentioning like he was working hard, and then it always shows how he was looking into the saxophone after every small move he's done, and it also mentions in the first two paragraphs, I think it mentions like the light outside, like it's like sometimes it's like really dark, and then light begins to shine. It's always mentioning that at like the uh in the paragraph.
Okay, so how do you think that impacts the overall story?
Wait, what?
So I said the question at the top, what patterns are you noticing? You notice some patterns. How do they impact the overall story? How do you feel like it affects the reading experience?
Um,
We are putting this at the top. So this question at the top of this document, we're
mhm.
putting that in the chat. Sorry, that was in response to Rafi's question.
Oh.
But I was asking you, so you told me a pattern, right? You said the artisan's always looking in the saxophone, and then it talks about the light outside. How do you feel like it impacts the story?
I think it shows like more detail and it focuses on like the um focuses on like more on the details maybe.
Okay. let's see what Gianna said. So other lines like the smooth brass and shiny pearls paired with the golden glimmer depicts a motif that the artisan works hard on his projects and is proud of him. This impacts the story because it makes the reader disappointed when the saxophone is locked away and they could wish for the saxophone to have a second chance. Okay, sort of getting there. The golden glimmer, I think, is one of the motifs that I was looking for, right? So if you even just control find on the story, golden glimmer, we have it here. I think we have it golden. It's like this color gold is used a lot in the story. And I think the title of the story also gives a clue to the motif, right? So what's the title of the story? Enchanting Emerald, right? Talks about how this this saxophone that's pretty much like the narrator of the story is ruined because it's, I think it's like rusted inside, right? So it's green on the inside. And they keep repeating that in the story. So let's see. My lustrous green skin to the sunlight, right? So this is the first instance. This boy that adopts the saxophone is also named Michael Green. I do not believe that is a coincidence. They say mottled emerald exterior, right? So there's a lot of references to this color. And it also, this is the color that sets it apart from the other saxophone. He says the other boy has a beautiful golden saxophone right here, snobby Brody, and his perfectly smooth golden saxophone. And so the color is sort of like a motif in that it separates this saxophone from the other ones, right? And I think it can also sort of represent like his inferiority because of the way he's rusted on the inside and he's green, he's different from the other ones. Then they become, successful, and we keep seeing this golden. So I think the gold color sort of symbolizes like, the ideal, right? The perfect, the success. We have emerald again. Are you guys seeing what I'm getting at? Like, look at all these motifs and how many colors are getting repeated. My roted emerald interior knot and weaken the glue. And so it's like, it's there at the downfall too. So that's the first one, the big motif that I wanted you guys to notice. So Rafi says, noticing a cycle of life and death. I agree. I think sort of along with like light and dark is like paralleled. So the saxophone's like built in this like furnace by the artisan, and then he's put away again, and then taken out again, given new life, and then put away again. Let's see. To show that in the beginning of the lives, we need to be shaped to something of a masterpiece, as we're all born a failure. Okay, that's an interesting interpretation. So the second flow pattern, or I guess I should say first because the last one was a motif, but the flow pattern I was looking for is this sentence. The artisan still works relentlessly, and then wiping off the water, blah, blah, blah. But each of these first paragraphs in this first section has one sentence, or at least one sentence with that structure. So the artisan works relentlessly. The artisan hammers it on top of a circular rod. The artisan cuts each pit by hand. The artisan enters the lounge. And then the artisan's cheeks blue. Right, so each of this is like a sentence structure that gets repeated over and over. It's clear that it's intentional. And I think it sort of sets up a sequence. Like when you read it, you're like, the artisan does this, and he does this, and he does this. And you can sort of like see him going through all these different motions, right? So that's how it affects the reading of the stories. It gives like a sequential reading. Does that make sense? Anybody have any questions about that flow pattern? Okay, cool. Hopefully you guys learned something about motifs, how they can be used, right? So we talked about the motif of color. Maybe you guys can think about using that on your homework. I think that's going to be one of the things to think about for this homework is like, how can you use something like a color, a song that gets repeated, a certain item, or an image, or maybe it could be anything. You could make anything a motif and think of a good reason to repeat it and use it to imbue it with meaning. So I will tell you guys about the homework and then I will go back to the feedback form. So the homework this week is to write another picture paragraph about this picture in as much detail as possible. Remember to think about using flow patterns with similes and metaphors or motifs throughout your story, right? So as a reminder, flow patterns are when you have a certain poetic device and use it repeatedly, right? So to sort of like build a pattern, and then you can either break that pattern and sort of emphasize when you break it. But sort of the perk of the pattern is that it sort of emphasizes that in your reader's head and sort of builds a rhythm, right? So think about using flow patterns or motifs. So like I said, any image that repeats, like the color that I talked about. And then I want you guys to read Bobo by Veronica Zhang, which is a great story. And we will take a look at it next week in class, or I should say Tuesday in class. And we'll do the same thing where we annotate it. Anybody have any questions with the homework or feedback I've given them, trouble submitting? No question. Okay, cool. So what we're going to do now is, since we have reached the halfway point of this course, this is a 6 lesson course. We're just about at the end of lesson 3. I'm going to give you guys a feedback form. So this is an anonymous feedback form, so feel free to be as candid as you want. I won't be able to figure out who's who. So anything you feel like we're doing well, we're not doing well, feel free to put it on there. The more you write, the better this class will get and the better your experience will get, hopefully. And I'm giving you 10 minutes in class to do it. So try to take your time and be as thorough as possible. So I'm sending the link to the Google form in the chat, which should open up here. Oops. You guys are in section 3A, CW100, 8 to 9 with 8 to 10 with Raymond. It's the only one with my name. And then go through and fill out. And give me a message in the chat when you are done. just a reminder to send a message in the chat when you're done. We're just missing one. Awesome. Okay, well, that's everybody, I think. Thank you for filling those out. You guys already know what the homework is, so I will see you on Tuesday at our usual time. Thanks for coming to class, and I'll see you soon.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.